Hello, I'm your piano tutor Gabriel, and today we're going to be looking at Of Foreign People and Lands from Schumann's Kinderszenen. This is a really beautiful and sweet piece. It acts as the introduction to the whole suite, and the whole suite, Scenes of Childhood. So these are not pieces written for children necessarily. They're pieces written from the perspective of an adult looking back on childhood with a sense of nostalgic detachment. And that really is key, because that's going to inform how we choose to interpret the pieces. Now, the piece is in a rounded binary. It's in A section followed by a B section that has an A section closing it, and both of those are repeated. So we hear the A section a total of 8 times in the whole piece, and even within that A section we have the phrase repeated 3 times, 1 and then a direct repeat, and then it's repeated but it's expanded with a 1, 2, go, basically. And this is very, very common of the classical rhetoric. But there are some things outside of the even periodic phrasing that push the music forward. And these are some stuff that we're going to have to serve. The mood of the piece is dreamy, it's reminiscent, and what we want to do is create a feeling of sostenuto that runs through the whole piece to create one entire dreamscape of memory. And that's crucial, and that's going to inform how we choose to phrase, how we're going to voice, and what we're going to emphasize. So we're going to get into all of those things today, but first we're just going to play through this first section and dissect a bit of the texture and talk about initially how we're going to phrase it. So the piece starts here. We want to feel 2 in a bar, so we're at a moderate tempo. So really beautiful, pretty music. And here, something of a lullaby that we're trying to achieve. This phrase here, it's a 2-bar phrase, it's an even phrase. How are we going to voice this? What I would recommend is the point of most tension, both in terms of the range of the melody and the harmony, comes in the second beat. So it's offset, it's not in the middle on the bar line, it's offset early, and then we trail away. So it's not just that this rising sixth, which is so important as a motive that runs through nearly all of the pieces. First thing we hear, this top is the most important, and then we trail away. Now we have this tripartite texture. We have the bass, the triplets in the middle, and the melody on top. The melody is going to be the most important part, at least the first time that we hear it. So really giving that shape and keeping it interesting is very important. If we choose to do this and we don't keep it, here's the reason I don't recommend emphasizing on the bar. Because if we do, and we emphasize here, what we have is a really even pulsating swing between tonic and dominant, tonic and dominant. But here, what's happening is this harmony, this preparatory dominant, it's quite exotic. We've got the B flat and we've got the C sharp. And then we resolve down, and then again, we have the 7th here. We're fading away, and then eventually here. So by shifting the emphasis 1 early, it gives us this lilting feel, and it's this feeling of tension and then a long coast and release. If we choose this, I'd recommend the second time that we hear it, it's like an echo. It's a little softer. It's a slightly muted version of what we heard before. If you want to, you can use the una corda pedal with that to help you achieve that. Now, when the phrase starts to develop, we can get a little bit more full-throated. We have these really nice harmonies here in the left hand that are based on inversions. So we're still in G, but with the 3rd in the bass. We don't hear this bottom G till the very end. We come up to C, lovely sonorous open chord. the two parts fold in and we have an inversion. This is almost like a chorale-like harmony. It's really beautiful. This nice suspension, and then back. And we don't hear this G till the very end of the section. So the third here is kind of important, you know, in terms of the voicing, the Schenkerian voicing of the harmony. But here, the melody, the most focal point is no longer at the top. Yeah, I'd actually recommend it's here where we move to chord 4. This can be our center. Now let's talk a little bit about our interpretation. There's a fantastic recording by Katsaris. I mean, the way that he plays the final piece in the suite, the way that he plays a child falling asleep, he has a real sensitivity to his playing that's just mesmerizing. But what's unique about his performance, and I'll link it in the description for you, is that what he has, when he does this repeat, the way he approaches this repeat is he emphasizes the middle voice, which is the lowest note in the triplet. Sometimes it's actually spelled out loud in some editions, sometimes it isn't, it's just implied. But basically the second time I'll overemphasize it here. So we hear, and that's an option for us. What it does is, when the music is so repetitive, it just gives us this feeling of, you know, a renewal. That although we're coming back to the same place, something has been changed, something is unique. So that's an option for us. This just takes a little tension in the right hand. What he does, he rhythmically displaces it. So, like that, and not as much as that. Personally, that's not to my taste, but this is something very subtle, something very personal. It's something you're going to have to decide for yourself if you want that. But that is an option. On our repeat, we can emphasize that middle voice if we choose to. Now, let's talk about our pedaling. Here, what I would do, I'd keep pedaling on every beat. So every change of harmony, nice and simple. And then with our fingering, what I do here, you can switch over to 5 or come down here and blur it with the pedal. It doesn't really matter. What we want is a constant source of sustain. And whatever it is we choose, whether we choose to do the echo or not, whether we choose to make the emphasis on the bar or on the second beat of the first bar. All these things, they're all about one thing, creating a sense of sostenuto, a sense of sustain, a sense of forward movement, that runs throughout the whole piece. Now let's talk about the rhythm. This is kind of related, as the harmonic rhythm is displaced from the periodic phrasing, the rhythm there. Let's talk about this dotted rhythm at the end of the melody. Now, if Schumann just wanted a straight lullaby, perhaps he would have written this in 6/8, but he hasn't. He's written it with this polyrhythm, and there's some ambiguity about this. In Schubert, you can see this in some of his impromptus. The dotted rhythm is supposed to come in line with the last note of the triplet. Now, in this context, that's obviously not what Schumann wants, but sometimes, and you see this with students, they play it as if it is a triplet 16th note, as if it is a triplet semi-quaver. So you'll hear something more like this. And it just comes halfway between the two. What I'd recommend is really learning to play an authentic 4/3 polyrhythm and placing the dotted note as if it were in that polyrhythm. So you can use anything with 1 syllables, 2 syllables, 1 syllable, 2 syllables, but one that gets used is Brahms, Mozart and Haydn. Brahms, Mozart and Haydn. So picking the 4 rhythm with our right hand, let's play it out with our thumbs. Like this. And then just hold back the 2 in the middle. So together. Like that. And that's the rhythm that we want to achieve. What this does is it gives the music a sense of forward momentum and dynamism, a kind of tension, also stratifies the music. It gives the melody, it exists in a different rhythmic continuity than the rest of the music. That's very important. So bringing it closer to get that polyrhythmic syncopation, to get that happening, bring it closer to the note of the triplet and avoid it being halfway between the last note of the triplet and the first note of the next bar. Like this. Now we have our B section, our developmental section, where we're in these, minor cycle of fifths that's happening here. So here, what I'd recommend on our repeats, the first time we emphasize the top, these parallel thirds. And the second time, we emphasize the bass. To do that, we'll have to be a little particular with our fingering. What we don't want is this. We don't want to be paddling with our fifth finger. So make sure where those little melodic step down, the dotted rhythms, make sure that you're playing finger 3 here, just to keep everything joined. 3. And then here. 3. And then here. And then make sure here we do 2 and 3. So this note is actually sustained, the D. And we want to hear that harmony sustained here. So the D goes throughout. Some people hold it all under the pedal and then they clear the pedal at the end, or they lift it and you lose the D. You actually want to hear that, I recommend. Very important. Now here we have a rit, and then we have a ritardando, and then we have a fermata. After the fermata, officially, the rit ends. That's when the music comes back to regular. So we're paused and suspended, but I wouldn't imagine it as though you're traveling up a hill. You just reach the top and then you come back down again. So it's not a point of being static. It's not a point where the music and the flow of the rhythm is interrupted. What you want is for it to be suspended. So we want a rhythmic suspension, just as the harmony is suspended. We want a rhythmic suspension rather than a rhythmic interruption, because this is not the end of the piece. So as we go on, and we ease back into the bar. Officially this C is no longer in the rit, but we can be a little generous with it and give it a little bit of space. Now let's talk about the voicing for the very, very end. When we finish, we have this G at the bottom. And it's the first time the phrase is ended like that, where we have it. When we have an open chord like this, a little bit of voicing, if we just bring out the bass note, it gives a strong foundation, and the fifth and the third are already there in the overtones anyway. So we can make it sound really nice and rich. If you choose to emphasize this chromatic middle line earlier on, you may choose to do that at the end. You may choose also, this is an idea, to flip it. So we have the first time in the B section, we emphasize the top part. Then when we get to the repeat of the A section at the end of the B section, we can emphasize this chromatic middle line. Then when we repeat, we emphasize the bass, this melody, and then when we come to the end, we play it exactly like we did at the beginning of the piece, creating a full circle. This is just a creative way where we can get a kind of maximum variety out of the material. This is personal. It's to do with your sense of taste, but that is a solution to create a full kind of dramaturgy out of what on the surface seems like a very repetitive lullaby music. So there you go. That's all I have to say for this video. In addition to this video, there is a guide that will cover everything that we talked about today and some stuff that we didn't get around to. If you have any questions about the piece, please don't be afraid to write them down in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to get to them. I do offer online classes, so if that is something you're interested in, you can find the information down below. Depending on when you see this video, I may or may not have any availability in my teaching schedule, as I am particularly busy right now. Now, that's all I have to say for now. You'll hit a full performance of the piece. Good luck on your journey learning it, and I'll see you in the next one.